morning. As we've just heard, I'm Michelle Sellinger. I'm director I have a global role for education in Cisco's consultancy practice, and have been involved in partnerships for education for a number of years through work that I got involved in when I worked for Cisco's corporate affairs, our CSR element, working in the Middle East and in Africa, to try and look at how you could work together with the private sector, the public sector, and education institutions to try and improve the economic viability of a country and to promote the skills of its citizens and the school children and university students in order to provide that country with wherewithal for economic growth and to take its place in the global market. And one of the projects I was involved in was the World Economic Forum, Global Education Initiative. And we started that in Jordan. And the idea was, instead of each company like Microsoft or Cisco or HP or non-IT companies going in and working with a group of people in the country and everyone doing little initiatives and ending up with what we call the rusty tractor syndrome because they didn't have the parts to fix it. We wanted to do much more of a capacity building project and work together. So the idea was that we brought the private sector from Jordan together with the international private sector. We involved the government, we involved the Ministry of Education, Ministry of ICT, and we worked with agencies like UNESCO, like UNDP, and so on, to bring, we worked with 100 schools to try and make a significant change. And we had a huge impact by working together. So UNESCO and World Economic Forum then got involved in what was called multi-stakeholder partnerships for education. So that's the basis on which I've proposed this forward, really looking at the importance of it. But we're going to look at it today in the context of partnerships between higher education, industry, and or the public sector, and what makes them important, what makes them work, and how they work. So I'm going to introduce each of my guests. They're going to give themselves a quick introduction as we go to the questions. I've got 3 questions. If you have any questions, please put your hands up and ask them. It's only a small group, so we can keep it very informal. But I've got 3 questions I'm going to pose to my 3 guests. And then we're going to throw the floor open for further questions and discussion. So I'm going to ask the first question and then ask each of the presenters to introduce themselves as they answer the question, because you'll forget who they all are by the time we've got to the end. And I'm not going to give them very long to talk. I'm going to be a really strict timekeeper. I think Mac's going to talk the longest, so...
No, I'll try not.
Okay, so the first question is, why are these partnerships between higher education industry and the public sector important, and what makes them work? Because it's, if having partnerships is fine, but they could end up going nowhere and making no difference. So Mac is going to talk about the work that he does at Birmingham City University. So I'll hand over to Mac.
Michelle, I will keep it brief, and my title is on there. The most important thing is the email address, so you can contact me afterwards, but there'll be a business card. So I'm head of School of Computing, Telecommunications and Networks, and like a normal academic, I had a full presentation. It's 8 slides long, and I could go through that. Okay, so why is it useful for us? So we've grown from one course in computer networking a long time ago in computer science to now 8 courses, 5 undergraduate courses, 3 postgraduate courses. We went from 1 lab to 6 labs, and 1 person teaching networking to 12 people teaching networking. So why did we do that? Well, there's lots of universities that teach it from a mathematical point of view. Well, we can do that too. The students don't come here to kind of learn from things like books. They come to us because of the equipment. And what these vendors provide for us is the equipment and the resources. And those equipment and resources are the ones, I hope I'm not stealing your thunder there, Eric. So those are the pieces of equipment that the students will use in industry. And I think that's why it's crucially important. And I've forgotten the second part of the question.
The second part is what makes them work.
Let me focus on the Cisco one, and then I'll give you Microsoft, and then I'll give you another perspective on some of the others later on. The very simple reason the Cisco one works, there is a tiered model. So there is Cisco who provides training, then they provide training at the next level, and we teach students. And at every stage, you teach students. And that support has to be paid for from somewhere. You pay for support, you will get the support. Don't pay for it, you won't. And with the Cisco model, it is fully supported right from Cisco all the way down. And the student has reference to John Chambers, your CEO. And we know students have wrote to him and said, fantastic program. Michelle, I could carry on, but I won't. I'll just pause at that moment.
Some questions afterwards. Thank you. Do you want to pass to Gary?
Hi, my name is Gary Coman, and I work for Cisco in our corporate affairs division. Out of corporate affairs, what we do is we run our corporate social responsibility initiatives, largely focused on education. We've gotten more recently into a number of healthcare initiatives around the world, but education is a large focus for us. And in this group, we run the program called Networking Academies, which Mac is referring to. And Networking Academies is currently over 10,000 schools around the world in 165 countries. We have 1 million students around the world currently participating. And we have over 20,000 instructors around the world that are actively teaching curriculum that's provided by Cisco. My responsibility in the organization is to try to enable those 20,000 instructors to be the best teachers they can in teaching technology. And it's a real blend of not technology in the classroom, but in the classroom teaching technology. So it's a bit of a different approach than we're not about putting PCs in classrooms for the sake of putting PCs in classrooms. A big part of, whenever I describe that, Cisco Networking Academy, 10,000 academies, 1 million students, the first thought people have is, wow, I didn't know Cisco ran schools. And certainly we do not. Every one of those education institutions is a public or private institution in its own right. We certainly don't have anything to do with what happens at Birmingham City University as a university in the UK, but we have a close partnership with organizations such as this around the world to make that work. The reason it works, the reason we have 10,000 academies is because organizations such as the one that Mac is representing form a bit of a distribution network for us. They, in turn, attract other schools to become networking academies, and those schools attract other schools to be networking academies. And we've grown this over, we're coming up on nearly 15 years of this program to get to 1 million students worldwide, and over 4 million students since we started the program has been quite amazing for us, and we continue to focus on this. Our part is we provide curriculum, we provide online access and tools, we provide simulation software that helps instructors teach technology and networking to students. And a big part of why we're successful with that is because we have such close partnerships in public sector, whether it's through government MOUs in certain countries to deploy education initiatives around technology, or with higher education itself and direct partnerships we have with universities, with vocational schools, in some parts of the world, a heavy focus on post-secondary education as well. So we continue to try to drive that, and we don't set ourselves, because we are a corporate social responsibility initiative, we don't charge for anything that we do. We don't set targets or goals around how many schools we have to have or how many students we have to have. But we're very interested in tracking the ongoing growth and opportunities that get created as a result of students participating in the program.
Hi, I'm Derek Godfrey. I'm the Deputy Vice-Chancellor at Buxton University, which is based near High Wycombe, on the outskirts of London. And we're a teaching-led, widening participation type of university. I've been there for the last 4 years, and before that I was in the commercial world in telecoms. So it was quite a step for me, I suppose, to move from that kind of corporate commercial world into education. Thoroughly enjoying it. The key thing I wanted to say about why a partnership's important is it's really the world in which the students live. If you think of anything that any of us does these days, we don't do it by ourselves. It's always about, you know, working with others. It's always about trying to understand what part I can bring to anything. So for me, it's actually a fundamental in the way that we try to develop our programs for any of our students, whether they be straight out of school or whether they're working in a company and they're trying to upskill themselves. And I suppose one of the things that we've done is that we've tried to embed that partnership approach into the overall ethos of the university, if that's not too high-blown a thing to attempt to do. But what we want to say is that anything that we do will be in partnership. We won't do anything in a standalone fashion. And in a simple way, there's clearly a partnership between ourselves and the students. But in terms of the conversation we're having this morning, for me, it's about getting engaged with the right people in the programs that we're trying to develop, so that we can make sure that those programs really meet the requirements of the students. Because in the end, the students aren't going to work for Bucks University. They're going to have to go out into the big wide world and be successful. And the sooner they get experience and exposure to people who are doing that on a day-to-day basis, the better it is for them. If they only ever see people who stay inside the university, then they're going to be missing out big time. So for us, even in terms of program development, trying to work out what the content needs to be, and it isn't just in terms of kind of IT and network programs, which clearly, you know, Cisco has a big input to play there. For me, it's also about the way in which we deliver all of our learning experience, because technology is the enabler. It isn't just the content, it's the way in which people learn. They expect to have all the social media, all the social networks available to them. And if we can't do that, then the students are not going to really enjoy their time with us and not get the most out of it. So to make these things work, I think it is about understanding kind of the skin in the game for the different partners. There's no point me trying to con someone to work with us. If they don't really feel there's something in it for them, then 6 months they might stick with us, but they won't stick with us in the long term. And we really want to develop long-term partnerships, whether it's with Cisco or whether it's with public sector bodies. We have a lot of work with, obviously, hospitals and people like that. So it's really about trying to come up with a partnership where it's clear what's the benefit both to the university, because we won't do it if it's not a benefit to us, to the partner that we're working with, but ultimately what's the benefit to the student. So if I can see that this is going to improve the overall student experience, then I'll do it.
Thank you. And I think, you know, I was really keen to have somebody away from the Cisco Networking Academy to speak to you today, because it's not just about the way we partner on our own programs, but really how industry partners more generally and the public sector partners more generally. You know, it's very interesting how the post-92 universities view employability compared to the pre-92 universities. And in some universities, almost employability is a dirty word. It's really interesting, isn't it? And it's this idea that you go to university to cultivate your mind and your brain, which is absolutely true, and I would never decry that. I've worked at red brick universities myself, so I know how important that is. But at the end of the day, not everyone is going to go on and become an academic, become a researcher. And we have to provide people who have the skills that are absolutely, I can see lots of nods in the audience. And one of the things that we're trying to do with the Academy program is to try not just to get the skills of technology, but also look at employability skills, those soft skills, the skills that we look for in graduates. And one of the things that we do in our own graduate training is recognize some of the difficulties that university students have when they come to the workplace. Timekeeping, using email. You know, they're used to social networking. Email is still very much a business tool. It's changing, but it hasn't changed yet. And not, you don't sign into a virtual meeting as Mickey Mouse or Father Christmas. It's just not on. And some of them do that. They just don't take the gravitas. You know, they still have that student mindset. So it's an interesting point that, you know, it's not just about skills. It's also about employability. And I think more universities ought to be thinking about that. And you know, I work very closely with Bucks, and I do like this way they are trying to bring in employers. So my next question is how is technology playing into this? I'm not talking about the technology now that we're teaching students, but the way we're using technology to develop those partnerships and to make those partnerships closer. So this time I'm going to start with Gary.
Okay. How is technology playing a role? Well, you know, there's some amazing things that happen with the proliferation of technology in education. One of the things that creates for most education institutions, the biggest challenge is the rate of change associated with high technology environments and keeping up with that. Because one of the challenges we have is we want to change our curriculum every 6 months. And education institutions hate that with a passion. But we're teaching technology, so the technology is irrelevant if you only change the curriculum every 2 or 3 years. Even 2 or 3 years is a challenge for a lot of education institutions. So we really have to find this balance. But part of it is that when you deploy the technology as part of the learning experience, then things start to change inside the environment that the students are learning in. When you are using 100% online-based curriculum, you're not producing textbooks. Right away, things change. The curriculum can change transparently to either the instructor or the student, and things can be updated at a much faster pace. But technology also has a huge enablers for changing the learning experience, regardless of what you're teaching, not just teaching technology. An example is that one of the directions we've taken in the past year and a half is to start to use simulation as a way of formulating skills-based assessment and providing rich feedback to both the student and instructor about the learning pathway of each student, which enables an individualized, self-paced learning path, even in a classroom environment, and gives a lot more information and richer context to how the student is both learning and processing and applying information that they're learning. Now, we do this because we're Cisco in the Networking Academy program. We do this with the technology we're teaching. But our assessment direction, utilizing both simulation and online tools, is a foundation for what we think is a great enabler of technology in the classroom. And when we talk about skills-based assessment, we're talking about an environment where the student is demonstrating the knowledge that they have hopefully mastered. And not just, did you complete the task, yes or no, and was the task successful? How did you go about approaching that task? What steps did you take? How many times did you have to repeat yourself? How many different pathways did you take to get to the result? And it's the mastery of the understanding of not only the task, but the application of the knowledge in terms of getting there. We couldn't do that without, an individual teacher cannot assess a student's ability to do that without directly observing everything that they do. An instructor in front of a classroom of 30 is not capable of doing that, obviously. So we're starting to automate a lot of the rich learning environments that are available, and that technology is the best implementer or enabler for us to be able to do that. So we're starting with what we do. We're hoping that there's application for that and expansion of that approach in other forms of education, whether it's mathematics or other subjects as well.
Thank you. For me, technology is of interest if it makes the learning experience more easy and more interesting, because no one learns anything if they're bored. So as we use technology, we should see it as a way of creating a richer learning experience. I'm sure that if you've got a really talented lecturer who stands at the front without any PowerPoint and waves their arms, they really know their subjects and they're really enthused by their subjects, that can be a great learning experience. So I think that kind of face-to-face engagement with the learner is really important. But what we can think about is, how can we actually build on that? How can we make it so that all learning experiences are really creative and engaging for the student? I think one of the things that we want to do very much in our attempts to improve that environment for learning is to increase the degree of interactivity, because we can say that people don't have the attention spans that they once had. I'm not sure that I ever had a very long attention span, even 20, 30 years ago. But to think that someone can stand at the front for 45 minutes and captivate an audience is a tough ask. So how can we actually break down the learning experience in a way that engages the students throughout what they're doing? And also, how can you support them when they're not actually in the classroom? How can you make sure that when they want to check on something, it's very easy for them to do that? So for me, the real reason for going for technology-enhanced learning is not because of the nice kind of pieces of kit that you can have, but does it actually improve the quality of the learning experience? And
help you in terms of your partnership
So the supplementary question is how does it sort of help in terms of our partnerships? I think there's a very simple way in which it works, in that it provides a natural kind of conduit for people to participate with us. So, for example, one of the things, if we're developing IT programs, and maybe I should stick more to those, then having a way in which maybe people from Cisco or other IT companies actually come in and participate within the learning is one of the ways that you do it. I think the other thing from the student perspective is a bit about credibility, that they know that in the end they're going to have to get a job with one of these companies, or maybe start their own company and sell to one of these bigger companies. So by having engagement with people like Cisco and HP, for the students, it kind of gives them a bit of brand recognition that they're seeing that the university is working with the right people, and therefore the kind of the content goes with that, because no one would expect Cisco to produce something that was naff. So therefore you kind of start on a higher plane because of the people that you're partnering with. I think the other thing for us is really about making sure that we don't believe that we know everything. You can become very inward-looking in a university environment. You become an academic, almost back to what Michelle was saying in terms of where the subject is king rather than the output is king. So if you've got academics who really think the subject is king, they need to be challenged by people who are working outside the confines of an academic environment, and by bringing people in from companies in this partnership way, that enables them to see that, you know, maybe there are different ways of doing things. Maybe things have changed since last time they looked. So that overall partnership, I think, plays into the richness of the educational experience. I did want to say two more things, if you don't mind. Firstly, well, of these couple of points before I finish, it's what the students expect. You know, if you think about their lives, they don't have a life without having their fingers probably not on a keyboard anymore because it's all touch screens. But, you know, that's the way that they work. When they're watching TV, they'll have their laptop or their iPad on their lap doing whatever they're doing. So to think that that's the way that they live their lives, but in an educational environment we say, no, throw that away at the door as you come in, it's just not going to work. So making sure that you've got a technology environment that matches what they have in the rest of their life is almost a prerequisite for me. And then the final point I'd make is around flexibility for the university or for the educational provider. We need to be able to make sure that we can deliver our educational content whenever, wherever people want it. And technology enables you to do that. So, for example, you know, if you want to be doing something with students who are actually in another country, or they want to do it at home in the evenings, you've got to be able to give them that access. Otherwise, you're constrained by that sort of, as I say, 9 to 5. I don't think too many students like 9, but you're stuck with that working day, and that's not really going to work for students going forward, because again, their working lives will not be like that. It's so much more the case now that people are working on the go, and so they've got to learn on the go as well.
Thank you. So I was going to say the martini effect, anytime, any place, anywhere, that Derek alluded to. It's used a number of times, so I thought I'd use it here today. So just taking that point, how many of you got iPhones? iPads? And has anybody written any applications or want to write some applications? It's technology-enabled learning. So technology for a technologist, no problem. But what about the teachers and what about the nurses? And you've seen some examples of physical things in the halls next door. Well, we've got a number of projects across the university, and I'm great to tell you that obviously one of my staff has done a fantastic piece of work. And what we've done with that is technology-enabled learning. So what we've done is we've done an application on the iPhone that the student can download for free from iTunes U, the university, and can use that anytime, any place, anywhere. What students are not doing is coming and reading, like we've already discussed. They're coming here to use the resources that these guys have provided. So in terms of partnerships then, the partnerships for me, so if I take some of the big vendors, IBM, Cisco, Microsoft, Oracle, what they're providing is staff to come in and talk to students about employability. In fact, we've got a Cisco event in the first week of December. We've got an Oracle event in November, and I'm just about to do an event with Microsoft. where students that are involved with the Networking Academy programs with us are coming to us, and these guys are presenting to those students, not myself, and saying, guys, if you do this, this and this is the possibility. Again, I could speak a lot about this. I won't, because I've got a few other things that I want to share with you at the end of the talk. Michelle?
Okay, thanks. Thanks for that. I think there's also, the use of technology to bring in experts from industry into the classroom, into the lecture hall, rather than do things third hand, which is often what you do. And and I think somebody talked about I think it was Derek said about the 45-minute lecture. And if you bring in somebody who's inspirational, they will talk for 45 minutes. It's not your normal weekly lecturer. It's also about the mentoring, the three-way dialogue you can have with students who are doing work-based learning, particularly in FE. And also that contact when students are out on work experience, maintaining contact without them having to go there or them having to come to you. And then the other thing is the evidence of work-based learning that you want to assess. Why write an essay? If you're doing bricklaying, you want to show that you can build a wall, so take a video. Bring the video in, send the video in. So there's lots of ways I see technology playing into this, and it's building that relevance into it. So thank you for that. So our final question, then I'm going to hand over to you when these guys are finished, and I'm going to start with I'll start with Derek this time, and then we'll end up. If we actually end with you, Matt, then you can go and show the rest of your staff. So it really it's really how have you partnered? So for Gary, the question is why have people partnered with us? What is it about the Cisco Networking Academy that we have 1 million students worldwide and all those academies? What is that unique thing that Cisco has to make it the biggest distance learning program in the world, or blended learning program in the world, I should say? And for Derek and Matt, the question is, why have you partnered with Cisco and other IT companies, of course, in terms of your own development? I mean, and I think the answers I'm going to get from you and from Derek have been quite different because of the Networking Academy connection there, but Derek not with you, is working with Cisco in other ways. So I'll start with you if that's okay, Derek.
So I'd probably start with something which is about supply chain management, in that I think the old model of kind of purchasing is redundant, and therefore in any supplier relationship that I have, I will want it to be a partnership relationship. It doesn't add a lot of value to me to just buy things. There are lots of ways of buying things. And technology can make that very easy for us to achieve. So for me, it's about saying, if I'm going to get real value add for the university, it's not going to be from a traditional supplier relationship. I'll always haggle on the price, and that's always an enjoyable conversation with Cisco. But if that's all I'm haggling about, then I've missed it, because the reason I'm buying this kit is because it's really going to enrich the educational experience and all those other things that we talked about. Therefore, in any relationship that I'm going to be developing, I want it to be a partnership relationship, and there are some kind of critical features around partnerships that I'd want to use. Firstly, I'll only want to partner with the best people. Why would I want to spend my time working with someone who's a bit off the pace? Cisco passed that test. Secondly, do I think that they're actually going to get involved with me? Are they going to put some effort in to actually make the partnership rich for me, as well as it being rich for them? And again, Cisco passed the test on that. As I said, I think at the beginning, I've been working with the university now for just over 4 years, and we started up the Cisco partnership with Hewlett-Packard as well in the very early stages of my time at the university, because I saw that the university, we were going through a big restructuring of the university, and IT was going to be a fundamental for that. So I wanted to make sure that in starting that journey on developing our IT, we started it with people who were going to stick with us over the full period of the development of the university. And I hope that goes on for more than 5 years, 4 or 5 years. That obviously goes on into the future for a long time. So partnership for me with IT suppliers or people like Cisco is making sure that they've got kind of the ability to stick with us and develop the opportunities that come up within the university. And then the third thing I'd say, and I'll stop there after this one, is making sure that it isn't just about technology. There's a lot of good technology out there, and I enjoy technology without a doubt. But for me, I want to make sure that I'm getting more than just technology. I want to make sure that I'm getting stuff that's actually going to be very close to my overall learning experience, and we've been working very closely with Michelle to make sure that that's the case. And it's kind of hard within a university like ours, because the problem that you can quite often get is that as soon as people see any brand, Cisco, HP, their assumption is these guys are out to sell us more stuff that we don't really need, because that's going to, you know, get their quarter-end numbers the way they want them to be. So what we've almost got to get over that kind of expectation that the suppliers are out there to kind of just sell more kit that we don't really want. And I think that's why I'm keen to keep my number of suppliers down to quite a small level, because it's only if you've got a few suppliers that you can develop those kinds of relationships. You can't. We're quite a small university, so realistically, I want to say that for almost forever and a day, for IT, I will want to work with Cisco. There's no value to me in kind of starting again, because I've invested a lot of my time and effort and the university's time and effort in making sure that I have the right kind of partnership with Cisco, which I absolutely do.
And just to add to that, I mean, my role inside Cisco is a consultancy role. We have a very small boutique consultancy of 200 people worldwide and over around 60,000 employees. So you can see we're very small. And my role is not, I don't have a sales role. My role is to work with key customers and potential customers on looking 3 to 5 years out and testing models, testing ideas. And the work that I'm doing currently with Derek and Buxton University is about improving the teaching and learning experience. And it's not about technology per se. We will look at how technology will play into that, and technology will become the fourth utility, rather than it's a technology play, and let's see where we can fit the teaching and learning in. And that's, I think, it's those sorts of relationships that higher education needs to develop with all their partners, whether it's partners who are providing work placements or partners who are supplying them. So, sorry.
No problem. Shall I? What I'll do then is I did a presentation, so you'll have to see it. I think there's some very good pictures on there, and pictures are good. So if I'll just do the presentation. It'll probably take about 5-7 minutes, or as long as you like.
We've got time then for questions, which is great. So we'll give 10 minutes for questions.
So while I'm just going around there then, so how many schools?
Well, can you go to we've got the microphone there.
Hello again. Can I just check how many schools we've got today? Are you from schools? Colleges? Universities? Other institutions?
Vocational training.
Sorry?
Vocational training.
Vocational training. Okay. So the reason I was going to ask that is obviously it's going to be a university perspective. So what my school is about is computing, content and connectivity. And if you look at all of the schools and colleges and universities, in the kind of technology area that I'm involved in, you can talk about those. So whether that's the content to do with gaming technologies, the audio, the video, the graphical, what we try and do as a school then is connect those together. And there is a point to all of this right at the very end, is how Cisco, Microsoft and the other vendors connect. And what we're about is what the gentleman had just been saying earlier on, is about getting the students into the jobs in this fraternity. So that was my school I talked about. So we've got about 1,000 students. We've got 8 undergraduate courses and 5 postgraduate courses. We do some research, some knowledge transfer, and we do some very small programs, about 6-week programs, where we're taking the technology that the partners have brought to us into SME, SMBs. And then we do some professional training, which has been kind of quite a large element of my work over the last 5 years or so. And we do some business engagement, both backwards and forwards. So typically with Cisco, what we do is we look at their product set, use those into the SME, SMB market, and then what we try and do is get those students out to use the technologies that we're using. So these are the courses, and if you look at the courses, they're not all Cisco-based courses, not all networking-based courses. The resources, by and large, that the vendors bring to us are general. So the materials that we use from Cisco, 80% of that is generic. And I do get the professors and doctors saying, oh, that's a lot of training, Mac. And I say, well, if you look at the pedagogy underneath what these guys have produced, then you'll see that actually it's not just training, it is relevant, it is educational, and there is some very good rubrics under what these guys are trying to teach. So there's a whole lot of courses, and what we have done is use the people like Cisco, Microsoft, HP, and all of the others, which I'll show you in a moment, and use their resources and sprinkle those into those courses. And why have we done that? The reason is when they get to the third year of that course, we need to either for them to go out to the Cisco or their partners, or we need them to go out to local education authorities, training providers, anybody that we can get them into to get that work experience or that placement or secure that job. So these are the partners that we're working with, and Derek said he'd like to do a few. This has been my major stay of my work for the last 10 years, and I've built up relationship with almost all of, well, almost, I would say, apart from IBM, which my colleague did, I built up relationships with all of those. So the kind of courses that we do in technology span the sphere. So you have business courses, which are business managers like myself sit and going to analyze the pieces of data that are coming forwards and backwards and using those later. Then you've got kind of forensic computing, games technology, which is software, slightly hardware related. Then you've got networking type courses. And then you've got telecommunications and electronics, where they are literally doing mathematical equations and resistors and capacitors. And what I've tried to do then is in each of those bands of courses that we have got, built up a relevant partnership. And the partnership is based on the certifications that they need to do. And the certifications are a benchmark then. It's a bit like what's a dollar worth today. There is a value to that certification across the world. And the resources that particularly Cisco provided, they could study with us, they could study with a school, a college, a university. And in fact, we do a project with the football clubs and with the prisons too. So, and all across the world, we go and help to run some of these programs. We're in China, and we're also into India and Pakistan as well. And I've built up a relationship because we want the students to be able to use these resources that are cutting edge on their final year and be able to go out on day one, be able to use the technologies. It's not just about teaching. We have got some research. And particular research at the moment is about cloud computing, how you can reduce your carbon footprint. And the government, UK government and US government, have signed a partnership on cyber security and spending millions of pounds. So what we looked at is how could that research then, and the problems that we've got in the community, how can those be put into the courses, and how can we teach those students, and when they go out from the courses that we're teaching to these students, and get the real jobs. So what are the statistics? Always good to have a bunch of numbers. So these are last year's figures up to July. So there were 50 placements available across the UK, particularly with Cisco. There were 12 projects that we had for BCU that we managed to secure. And across the last 3 or 4 years, we managed to secure 6 people into Cisco and their partners. It was about Cisco today, but I've got other things as well in terms of Microsoft and Oracle that we do. And how do we do that? Well, we're running forum days across the UK. We're going to Dublin next week. And for Dublin, it's about, guys, look, these are the technologies that are available. How are we going to get the students that are being taught into companies, into relationships, into SMEs, or for them to create their own businesses? And we do an employment day, one for Cisco we're doing. I've said we're doing one for Microsoft next year. And the first one on Oracle is on the 2nd of November. So if anybody's free, want to come and have a look at what we're doing and how we do things in Birmingham, you'll be more than welcome. And the normal things that schools and colleges and universities would have. So you have placements officers at university, you have outreach workers at colleges, and then you have, I've forgotten the term, but in schools you have the coordinators going to do work placements at schools. And the main thing for me is that we all have a responsibility for these students to give them the best opportunity for whether learning at school, college or university to go out into the big world. And not everybody wants to do a degree or will do a degree or are capable of doing a degree. And there is a stratosphere of qualifications from technician level to senior expert level in technologies that I do. And really, so kind of the future then, so what are we looking at and why are the partnerships that we've developed? And this is where I think the pictures actually paint better than the words. So the digital cities, how are we going to get the local government information out, the UK government information? How are we going to be able to transfer the information from one to the how the learner's going to be mobile, like the Bologna Agreement with Europe, or grow across the world? We're doing things with buildings and transportation. We've got a brand new campus opening, £50 million. With a bit of luck, it's going to be splattered with Cisco technology, and it's going to a whole load of sensors. We're getting the sensor technologies information back, and we want to look at it how we can run that more efficiently. And in terms of transportation, so we're putting GPS devices on various pieces of transport so we can get the information back and help Birmingham. And security of forensics, I've already talked about, actually a very, very big business. Data analytics and intelligence, you know, it's like Tesco have 11,000 different flyers. I thought there was 3 or 4. And then the green and sustainability, everybody's interested in. And my final bit is communications, which is a thing that I'm involved with. And I'll finish there, but I could talk for a while.
I just realised I didn't give Gary a couple of minutes just to talk about why people have decided to partner with Cisco
No, thanks, Michelle. I'll be brief. Well, I mentioned earlier when I sort of kicked off that we're moving into our 15th year of this program. And the reason why education institutions partner with us is mainly because we've proven over that period of time that we really are trying to be about the improvement of education, the benefit to the student, the outcomes of the student, and benefiting that as much as we can. And we're not going into schools trying to sell stuff you don't need. Most of my career has been in sales. I honestly don't think I ever tried to sell someone I didn't need, but there's a lot of convincing you have to do about why people need stuff. That's a different, that's a different approach. But you know, we've definitely proven ourselves over the years that we have been after this initiative for the benefit of the student and for the improvement in education. And that's why education institutions continue to partner with us, and we are excited about the prospects of opportunities around the world to continue to partner with more and more of those institutions.
Thank you. Okay, so now I'd like to ask if you have any questions you want to ask of any of us. We've heard people talking about the importance of partnerships, the values that it brings, the role that technology plays in that. We have focused particularly on IT, but it isn't just about IT. There are lots of other ways in which you can partner with industry. Do you have any experience you want to share or any questions that you want to ask me or any of the panel? Oh, there we are. We have one at the back.
When Mac went through who's from where, you didn't actually ask was there anybody from the local authorities. But this is a sort of schools-based question, which is, I think there's some very interesting things that I've learnt about, if you like, the potential of the use of technology within HE. But we have within the UK an education system that is actually still testing people by asking them to sit down on June the 5th and sit there and write an IT paper. And I mean, I know much less about HE, but I've got a feeling that HE is still a little bit paper-based. Yeah. So how do we shift that fundamental bit of the education process to keep pace with some of the things that you've talked about?
I'll start. I'll just quickly answer from my perspective. I'm actually working with WorldSkills UK on a project called Behind the Screens, which is looking at revamping IT, GCSE, and the assessment of it. So there is some work going on in that respect. But yeah, you're absolutely right. So who wants to answer that? Derek?
I think it's a really important question. One of the things that we try to think about is what we say is learning, teaching, and assessment. In that, actually, Michelle used the example of someone learning a practical skill. If you're teaching someone a practical skill, giving them a 3-hour written examination is unlikely to be a good way of testing whether they can actually build a wall straight. But there are some things where a written examination is the appropriate thing to do. But what you need to do is when you go back to the design stage and you're trying to bring together this new program, you need to think about what is the appropriate form of assessment for the thing that you're trying to get people to learn, and how you're going to test that. And that might be a 3-hour exam in some cases. It might be an interactive thing that you do on the web. It might be actually demonstrating that you've got this skill by making something, you know. And so I don't want to exclude any form of assessment. What I worry about is when the assessment is detached from the teaching and learning. So we kind of say, by definition, the 3-hour exam is the right way to test. That's not at all true. You need to go back into that teaching and learning to identify what is the appropriate mode of assessment.
I'd just like to echo what Derek said. So let's just take that example about the brick wall. If you're a structural engineer, maybe you could do the maths, but if you're actually going out to do the work, then that's exactly what you would need. So the kinds of things that we're doing is looking at the teaching and learning strategy for each of the modules on a degree, for example, and saying, okay, so what is the learning outcome? How do we assess the learning outcome? Some learning outcomes will be assessed by online exams, by written, some by video, by audio. And the other important thing from our point of view, and I think call it inclusivity, is all the learners don't learn the same way. There are different ways. And what we try and look at is, okay, so if we're going to do this assessment, how many people are we neglecting? How many people do we want to get through? How do we get those through? So our teaching and learning strategy takes all of those on, starting to take all of those on board. There are the odd professors that say, 3-hour exam, got to be the way, Mac. And what I've done for the last 8 years, being involved with the Cisco work, is saying, look at this material. Yes, you can assess it by a 3-hour exam, but actually, when he goes to the stock exchange, they actually don't care whether he's passed a 3-hour written exam. They're losing billions of pounds a minute. What they want to do is get that network up and running within minutes and for him to sign the check and go home. Michelle?
It's how do you test initiative? Because initiative is such an important thing that people need in order to succeed in the workplace.
Hi, my name's Trevor Clark from Acure, the work-based learning arm of Coventry University. My question is of a different angle. I know Michelle touched upon employability skills. I'd phrase it a little bit differently because you guys have talked a lot about the IT, the technology side of things and for the learning. Those who go into IT do have a reputation of not being the best of communicators out there. So what I'd like to ask is, how are universities and employers like Cisco working on developing what I would call communication skills and also as well-rounded human beings that are not totally lost in the virtual and online world?
Do you want to answer that, Gary? I think it makes sense.
Yeah, thanks for that question. It's actually fantastic. There's a number of things that we try to do specifically in this area. The first thing I would say is that we have a series of courses that are designed to teach technical content related to a subject called CCNA. It's a certification level that could be achieved by going through Mac's program or other Cisco networking academies. There's 2 ways you can do that. You can attend a 2-week training class and get all the technical knowledge and go sit for the exam and achieve that. We teach that technical content over 4 70-hour courses with a heavy emphasis on project-based learning, on teamwork, on communication, on interaction, and we really try to embed the soft skill part of what we teach through the design of the course, not only for the student, but quite frankly, sometimes it changes the way the instructor behaves as well, so they're not focused on the technical content interaction. So we approach that from the design of the course, the fundamental design of the course first and foremost, and a lot of work goes into that. But then there's another angle that we bring to the table as well, which is we launched last year a game called Aspire. And the Aspire game is designed to leverage a certain level of technical knowledge that you gained through participation in Networking Academy. You have to have some technical capabilities in order to play the game. But it creates a simulation environment that's designed specifically around entrepreneurial skills. If you want to achieve the highest level in the game, you have to have social awareness. You have to make decisions, financial decisions, as well as technology decisions. You need to demonstrate customer service skills and customer interaction skills in order to achieve a high level of the game. So in different ways, we're weaving this into the entire education program. We're teaching technology. First, fundamentally, that's what we do. We're Cisco, we're a technology company. We're going to provide technology education initiatives. But we're trying to weave so much more into the learning experience, both for the education institution and the student, through the way we design that. And that's how we approach it, and hopefully that becomes a big benefit for those that participate.
And Max, I'm going to talk about something else. Do you want to quickly
Can I-
mention it? Yeah.
I will mention it very, very quickly. So Cisco's fantastic technology curriculum and resources they provide, but they also provide $11 million worth of other curriculum, and that's about entrepreneurship. It's exactly what you were saying. Sorry, I've forgotten your name, Trevor. It's exactly what we need. And the employers that come to us say, oh, yeah, actually, the presentation wasn't that good, the communication skills. Then you put students in and they say, well, their research methodology wasn't quite there. So what are you doing, Mac? So what we've got is we've got a number of courses, probably 40, 50 courses. Some are a day courses, some are 5-day courses that these guys are made available free of charge to us. And what we do is run those in parallel with the Cisco material. Now, they are blended. You have to go and present, and there's a 300-page logbook which they effectively have to keep. So things about business plans, about marketing plans. And what they've provided is not just the materials and resources in the labs, but also video content from other universities and other providers to make that available. And I would say that now, actually, other vendors have caught on. IBM have got something, Sun had something, and Oracle are now redoing theirs. And I was talking to the Microsoft guys last week, and they said, that stuff you saw 2 years ago, Mac? Actually, we've upgraded it and made it better. We've taken a lot of comments on board. So they're all trying to do these. And I would say, if you are a Cisco Academy, come and talk to us. That material is available, and you can run that through the programs. Michelle?
Well, thank you. I know we noticed that we're over time, so I won't take any more questions. But I want to first of all thank Derek, Gary, and Mac for giving us their benefit of their wisdom and describing some of the things that they do around partnership. I mean, what partnerships do? They provide relevance, they provide authenticity, they make it practical and collaborative. And Derek said, we need to partner with the best, and to engage with higher education in new ways so that courses are relevant, further education as well, not just higher education. When I talk about higher education, I mean about the two. And really to try and improve students' life chances at the end of the day and improve the quality of teaching as well. Thank you very much for coming. If you want to learn more about the Cisco Networking Academy, Gary is around today, Kimberly over there, and Mac will be at the Have a Go stand, which is near S4 in the main halls, and you can actually go and see some of the academy program and what people are doing. You could write it down to me. You'll tell you. Yeah. And then we have a Cisco stand if you want to come and talk to me at any stage about anything. So I'll be down there later on. But thank you for attending. I know it's small, but a nice group, and I hope you got something out of that. Thank you. Thanks.